Order. We'll move to question time. I call Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, Senator McCarthy. The Motor Trades Association of Australia has released data showing Labor's family car and ute tax will impose $2.7 billion cost on car manufacturers in 2029. Why is the government imposing this tax on Australian families in the middle of a cost-of-living crisis?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. I'll just wait for the Senate to come to order. Order. Senator Ayres and Senator Wong. Order. 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 Senator McCarthy.
Returning to his vomit.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator McKenzie for the question. And I wonder if this is the end of their weekend policy on vehicles.
We've heard that one before.
The Albanese Labor government is working to get more cleaner and cheaper to run cars into the market so they're accessible by all families, President, in Blacktown, Launceston and Cranbourne, and a standard that will save Australians $1,000 a year on average in fuel costs. We all remember the days when there was only one or two hybrids or EVs on the market that were prohibitively expensive for families. And under the Albanese government, we are now seeing over 160 new models available. 160,
I've
President,
seen the ads on TV,
including Australia's first EV for under $30,000, and they're getting cheaper.
There you go.
They're getting cheaper.
Saving petrol.
Cars that have never been available to Australians before, like new Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid.
Minister McCarthy, please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie.
On a point of direct relevance, Madam President, I asked about the Motor Traders Association modelling that had been released today and was also on the front page of the Australian Financial.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Order. Senator McKenzie, the minister is being directly relevant to your question. Minister McCarthy.
On that there, if you need it.
Yeah.
You'd make them work it for free.
Senator Ayres. Order. That's twice within the matter of about 4 minutes I've called you.
Well, President, I mean, we know that under the Liberals and Nationals, the markets would once again be frozen in time, with the best cars on the market going to the other countries. So what MTAA's analysis actually highlights, President, is how ridiculous claims by lobbyists and the opposition were. Their overblown campaigns, not even a year ago, projected brands would have to wear $38 billion in fines, which would be passed through to consumers and push prices
Haven't seen
up.
that yet.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie, first supplementary.
According to the Motor Trades Association, the average tax on a Toyota will be $2,855, on the average Ford $2,959, and on the average Kia $3,102. Why is the Albanese government forcing up the cost of new cars for everyday Australians in the middle of a cost-of-living crisis?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, we do have many quotes from experts in the field. In fact, Rohan Martin, the CEO of the National Automotive Leasing and Salary Packaging Association, says from Werribee to Wanneroo, ordinary Australians living in the outer suburbs and actually the people most likely, President, to take advantage of and benefit from the discount to battery EVs and plug-in hybrids and provided through the FBT exemption and novated leasing. We're also seeing strong pickup among workers living in regional centres, including Ballarat and Toowoomba.
How about that?
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie, second supplementary.
Minister, I'm happy to table a copy of the analysis by the Motor Traders Association, if you need. At a time when more Australian families are buying hybrid cars, why, in the middle of a cost-of-living crisis, is the government taxing hybrids when these cars play an important role in reducing transport emissions? Why are you taxing hybrids?
Thank you, Senators. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. And it's interesting hearing the questions from Senator McKenzie, given that we had no support from those opposite to improve the cost of living for all Australians, in particular the support around the tax. But no, well, let me tell you again, because it actually matters to the Australians out there that every time we put something forward in this Senate to improve the cost of living for Australians,
Minister
that
McCarthy,
side voted no.
Please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie.
On a point of direct relevance, Madam President, the minister in 3 questions now has not gone to the Motor Traders Association data that the minister she's representing has a copy of.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Wong.
President. Well, on the point of order, the senator in question, Senator McKenzie, referenced the cost of living crisis in her question. The minister is entirely relevant to respond on that point, and as she is doing.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator McKenzie, you did reference cost of living. In fact, I think in all of your questions, but certainly this one. Senator McKenzie, you're not in a debate with me. You've called the point of order. The minister is being directly relevant to your question. Minister McCarthy.
Well, thank you, President. And it is interesting to hear Senator McKenzie. We know that there is division on the other side. There is no conclusion of any of their policies. In fact, they really have no policies except one. But let me see what Paul Fletcher says. If Australia had fuel efficiency standards in line with comparable nations, estimates of the fuel saving per passenger vehicle could be above $500 per year, or nearly $28 billion in total by 2040.
Thank you, Minister. The time has expired. Order across the chamber. Senator Ciccone.
Thanks very much, President. My question, President, is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The Albanese Labor government has been very focused on unlocking our nation's prosperity and ensuring that all Australians get to share in the benefits of a future that is made here in Australia. How does the passage of a very crucial bill last night mean we're a step closer to delivering a better future for Australian workers, businesses and communities?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Ciccone for his question. I thank him for his ongoing support for Australian jobs, like all of those on this side. We are for Australian jobs. And the passage of the government's Future Made in Australia Production Tax Credit and Other Measures Bill last night marks a major step forward in building Australia's economic future, strengthening our industries and securing more well-paid jobs, establishing tax incentives that will mean instead of shipping resources offshore to be processed by other countries, we will add value here at home. And in addition to creating tens of thousands of jobs, blue-collar jobs, we will build Australia's sovereign capability in industries crucial to our future and strengthen our regional economies, whether it's in South Australia, in Whyalla, the Upper Spencer Gulf, in central Queensland, in the Pilbara, Victoria, New South Wales and northern Tasmania. And Labor's bill incentivises green hydrogen production to support industries, transition to cleaner energy and make Australia a renewable energy superpower. So after a wasted decade from those opposite who have never stood up for Aussie jobs, we are taking action to build Australia's industrial future, and all of us will remember those opposite cheering the decline of Australian manufacturing, under Prime Ministers Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison. And of course, they haven't learned. They've been true to form. Opposing the bill. Now, Senator Cash, you quoted CME yesterday. Let's see what CME had to say about our bill. I quote, offering production tax incentives for hydrogen production and critical mineral processing sends a clear message to investors. Australia is serious about seizing the opportunities presented by the global energy transition.
Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Minister, for that very comprehensive answer. Now, the Albanese government knows that a very strong and resilient economy relies on secure, well-paid jobs and a thriving local industries. How will the government's efforts to strengthen Australian manufacturing, support key industries and attract new investment not only create good jobs but ensure that Australia prospers in a very changing world?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. As the Chamber of Minerals and Energy said, offering production tax incentives for hydrogen production and critical mineral processing sends a clear message to investors. Australia is serious about seizing the opportunities presented by the global energy transition. I said that again for you, Senator Cash. You're so fond of quoting some people. Well, I'd invite you to consider this. Now, since we have come to government, we've seen a record 1.1 million jobs created, including 47,000 in manufacturing. 47,000 in manufacturing. We have had a range of policies, incentives in new energy, new projects, new technology, new markets, and our future Made in Australia agenda is central to that. But you know what, Senator Cash, Mr Dutton, the Liberals want to take Australia backwards, back to the most dire skill crisis in 50 years, back to the back of the pack in the renewables race.
Thank
and
you,
on
Minister.
top of that, $350 billion worth.
Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Thank you very much, President, and thanks again, Minister. Now, it's clear that the Albanese government wants our industries and exports to remain competitive on the world stage. What steps, Minister, is the government taking to advocate for Australian industries, secure new trade opportunities and ensure that the Australian-made products and resources can compete globally while delivering lasting economic benefits here at home?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Ours is a great trading nation. 1 in 4 Australian jobs depend on free and fair trade. And we on this side, the Albanese Labor government, will always back Australian jobs and Australia's interests, whether it's by strengthening ties with allies and partners, by restoring trade with vital partners, or seeking out new markets and new opportunities, driving deeper economic engagement with South East Asia, so that Australian businesses and all Australians can benefit from the fastest-growing region in the world. And our calm, constructive and consistent efforts have resulted in the removal, I know you don't like this, Senator Cash, $20 billion worth of trade impediments that existed under you, that hurt Australian producers. But what we do know, and what we've seen today and again, is that Mr Dutton and the Liberals are too reckless and too arrogant to be trusted with Australian trade, because they are too reckless and too arrogant.
Thank you, Minister.
And they play politics with our largest
export
market.
Senator McDonald.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Woodside Energy has applied to extend the life of the Karratha gas plant until 2070, which will guarantee thousands of jobs in Western Australia, generate billions of dollars in economic activity, taxes and royalties, and provide much-needed energy to be used locally and for export. The Western Australian Labor government has approved the project, with Western Australian Labor's Environment Minister saying gas is good. However, Albanese Government Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek has delayed Commonwealth approval for 2 months. Without her approval, this project will not go ahead. Will the Prime Minister show some leadership and ensure that this project is approved as soon as possible to give certainty to Western Australians?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister Wong.
Thank you. And I would say to the Senator, I'm aware of this project. I'm also aware of the investments and production that Woodside is engaged in, and we have engaged very closely in my portfolio with Woodside and with Ms O'Neill and her staff across a range of issues. So I would just make the point first, it's a very important part of not just the Western Australian economy but the national economy, and it is also a company who is engaged very closely with this government, and I put on record my appreciation for that continued constructive engagement. In relation to the project in question, if I leave...
Senator Whish-Wilson, order.
Okay, well...
Senator Whish-Wilson, I've asked you to come to order. Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Whish-Wilson, twice I asked you to come to order and you completely disregarded what I had to say. That is incredibly disrespectful. I've asked you to come to order. That is what I expect. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you. The second point I'd make, Senator, is you would have seen the release of the government's future gas strategy, and you would understand the place we believe gas has in the energy mix. In relation to the project, I would make 2 points. The first is that obviously, under the legislation that I think was passed under a Liberal government, this minister or any minister in this role has a set of statutory requirements, statutory approvals that she or he. Senator Whish-Wilson, if I could just, I'm responding to the senator's question. Do you want to get your questions next?
Senator Whish-Wilson, once again, you are being disrespectful. If you can't sit and listen in silence, I'd ask you to leave the chamber. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you, President. Which I'm sure, and a set of statutory requirements the minister must engage with. I'm sure, Senator, that Ms Plibersek will do so. I would make the point, since we have come to government, I'm advised that under Ms Plibersek's ministerial tenure, we have environmental approvals have doubled in terms of on-time approval, and has gone from 47% on-time approvals to, under the Liberals to 84% under us. So
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering
has expired.
Thank you, Minister. Senator, order. Order. I have Senator McDonald on her feet. She's entitled to ask her question in silence. Senator McDonald.
The Environmental Defender's Office is strongly opposing the extension of the Karratha gas plant, despite the significant economic benefit it will have for the people of Western Australia. Why is the Albanese government giving more than $2 million of taxpayer dollars every year to the EDO when their priorities are all about opposing job-creating projects which will benefit Australians?
Order! Order! Senator Scarr and Senator Sterle, I've called for order. That includes the two of you. Minister Wong, please continue.
I have been asked a number of occasions about the EDO, and I've responded that the government's expectation is that the Environmental Defender's Office should exhibit the highest ethical and professional standards. I think I may have spoken to the chamber previously that the Minister for the Environment has written to the CEO of the EDO making those expectations clear. I've indicated to the chamber that in relation to a range of allegations with regard to whether or not the EDO's conduct is in accordance with their grant agreement, that the Minister requested the Secretary undertake a review to consider whether or not the conduct had been the EDO's conduct was in accordance with the grant agreement, and I've indicated to the chamber that the results of that review are available on the Minister's website.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McDonald, second supplementary.
Isn't it clear from your previous answers that the Albanese government is delaying the approval of the Karratha gas plant in the hope of gaining preferences from the Australian Greens at the next election?
Great question.
Yeah. Minister Wong?
No.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKim?
Hey, what's that, Matt?
Thanks.
Can't hear you.
Thank you.
Senator McKim, resume your seat. Once again, I remind senators that Senator McKim and any senator is entitled to have their question heard in silence. Senator McKim.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, Australia's billionaires have more than doubled their wealth in the last 6 years, so that the 150 billionaires in this country have now hoarded an eye-watering $584 billion in wealth in the hands of just 150 people. The Greens have a fully costed plan to tax billionaires at 10% of their net wealth, which would raise $50 billion over the next decade. Interestingly, Minister, That is almost exactly what it would cost to fund free GP visits for every Australian. Minister, will Labor work with the Greens to make billionaires pay their fair share of tax so every Australian can visit a GP with no out-of-pocket?
Senator McKim, when I call you to sit, that's what I expect. Perhaps you need to time your question. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President, and I thank Senator McKim for the question. No, Labor doesn't have any plans to adopt the Greens political party's revenue measures that you have outlined, and I take note of the fact that you have said that they are fully costed policies, but the reality is, Senator McKim, is that you can promise whatever you like, but you never have to actually deliver it. And this is a big difference between the Greens political party and a party of government, which has to look at a whole range of competing pressures on the budget and work out how to meet a whole range of needs. We have a comprehensive tax agenda. We are trying to get superannuation tax concessions through this parliament, for example, which would raise revenue on those with superannuation accounts of greater than $3 million. We've been trying to do that. We've been unable to get that through this chamber to this point. But we have a range of measures, whether it be multinational tax reform. It's our tax cuts that we provided that we made better and fairer for all Australians so that they could get a better share of those tax cuts that were designed under those opposite. And we have been investing more than any government in Medicare because we recognise that being able to see a doctor and having that bulk billed is a priority for our government. The work that Minister Butler has been leading, Minister Carney has been leading, has been all about making sure that Medicare, that we stop it from falling off a cliff like it was heading there under those opposite, that we address that and that we reinvest in it so we can provide quality health care at an affordable level for all Australians.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKim, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, with Australia's billionaires each raking in a staggering $67,000 per hour every hour last year, how much wealth is too much for one person to have? How much richer will Australia's billionaires need to get before you make them pay their fair share of tax, or will you keep siding with ultra-wealthy billionaires indefinitely while everyday Australians are getting smashed by the cost of living crisis?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister Gallagher.
Thanks very much, President. And I listened to Senator McKim. I think we do have a progressive taxation system in this country, and we do want everyone to pay their fair share of tax, which is why we have been focused on ensuring multinational tax reform passes this parliament to make sure that those companies when they are operating in Australia, is paying their fair share of tax. But I would also say to Senator McKim, we have ensured a tax cut for every taxpayer, energy bill relief for every household. We're getting wages moving again. We're investing in cheaper childcare. We're investing in Medicare, cheaper medicines, free TAFE. These are all things that the Labor government wants to do and invest in our community and make sure that we are taxing people properly and that people do pay their fair share of tax. But I reject some of the propositions put by Senator McKim. We need to do what we can to make sure we're giving everyone a helping hand.
Senator McKim, second supplementary.
Minister, just last week the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "You judge a society not just by how it looks after the most wealthy, the Gina Rineharts of the world, but how it looks after the most vulnerable." End quote. Given Ms Rinehart has added over $10 billion to her wealth since you took office, when will Labor start making her and other billionaires pay their fair share of tax so vulnerable Australians can live with a little more dignity?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Order on my left. Order on my left. Senator McKenzie and Senator McKim. Order. 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 Senator McDonald, if you care to look, I am now on my feet. Beg your pardon, Senator Davey. From the start of question time, a number of senators in this place who I've called by name have been incredibly disrespectful and disorderly, to the point that I've had to stand. I expect there to be silence when the question is answered. If you can't remain silent, I invite you to leave the chamber. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I'll just let those two sides of the chamber argue a bit more at each other. But for us, the government, the extreme ends of those debates, for us as a government, we are making decisions in the best interests of all Australians, and we do have a focus on those who are most vulnerable. That is a key job of any government, to make sure that those who need an extra helping hand are getting that extra helping hand, but that there is opportunity for everyone, which is why all of the effort that we've put in the last 2.5 years has been to address areas where that wasn't happening enough and to make sure the budget can meet some of those pressures. So I would say again, if you look across the board, in housing, in healthcare, in education, in tax reform, in energy and the transition to more renewable energy sources, that has all been focusing on making sure that we are addressing those who are most vulnerable in our community, but making sure that everyone benefits from those types of policies.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Pratt.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Science, Senator Farrell. I refer to the Albanese government's plan for building Australia's future. On top of delivering immediate cost of living relief, how is the government creating secure and well-paid jobs in Australian manufacturing that will strengthen our economy and deliver a future made in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and can I thank Senator Pratt for her question, and like Senator Gosh, a wonderful representative for the great state of Western Australia. Now, well, I'm going to come to some of you. I'm going to come to some of you. Hold on. The Albanese Labor government is tackling the challenges of today while ensuring our prosperity into the future. We've made sure that every taxpayer got a tax cut, every household got energy bill relief. The Australians have access to cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines and a stronger Medicare. Yet we are looking to the future, a future built in Australia, and we are making strong progress. In the last few months, the National Reconstruction Fund, which is rebuilding Australia's industrial base, has invested $400 million in businesses across this country, while our industry growth program is supporting dozens of companies across robotics, next-generation batteries and equipment manufacturing. These are important investments in our national future, but securing well-paid jobs in critical industries across the country. It will ensure that manufacturing stays onshore, helping to diversify and strengthen our economy. We recognise that a domestic steel industry is vital to building a future made in Australia. And that's why I was recently in Whyalla with that terrific Premier Malinauskas, speaking with workers, and he's a wonderful fellow, very fine fellow, speaking with workers and contractors at the Whyalla Steelworks. Steelmaking is key to the nation's security and prosperity, and the Albanese Labor government will always stand up for our steelmaking workforce.
Has expired. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. It's clear that the Albanese government is backing manufacturing right around the country. So, President, how else is the government creating secure and well-paid jobs in Western Australia, backing regional communities and ensuring a future made in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pratt for her first supplementary question. Yesterday, the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits passed the Senate. And can I congratulate Senator Ayres for the terrific job he did in getting that legislation through. It was a great day for Australia, but, Senator Pratt, especially for Western Australia. consulted and supported by industry, the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits ensure that resources aren't just mined here, but Australia processes locally to maximise their value. It means more resource sector jobs providing secure and well-paid incomes to Western Australian families. Yet there are those in this chamber who voted against it. And I'm looking at it all over there. And I'm particularly looking at those Western Australian senators, including you, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Minister Farrell.
Senator Smith behind him, Senator Reynolds, Senator Brockman.
Has expired. Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, second supplementary.
Thank you. It's great to hear about the impact that the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits will have on my home state of Western Australia and the support it's received from industry. The minister has talked about a future made in Australia, but what other support is the government providing for manufacturing workers, and what is standing in the way?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell, and I remind you to address your response to me. Thank you.
Thank you, President, and I thank you for that admonition. Thanks, Senator Pratt, for second supplementary question. And look, I can answer that question, Senator Pratt, because alongside our plan for a future made in Australia, our $400 million industry growth program is helping Aussie businesses grow, ensuring that we increase our manufacturing capability and, most importantly, make more things here. We've delivered energy bill relief for Australian businesses, a tax cut for every Australian and higher wages for manufacturing workers. Each and every one of these measures have two things in common. They are supporting Australian manufacturing workers, and two, the Liberal and the National parties tried to block them. It's clear that under the Liberals and the Nationals, Australians would be worse off.
Thank
They're
you, Minister.
opposed
The
to
time
every
for
bit
answering
of
has
relief.
expired. Senator Pratt. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing, Senator Farrell. Minister, new research released today found that 7 out of 10 renters and mortgage holders are now in housing stress, and 1 in 3 lack confidence that they can afford their housing costs over the next 12 months. Yet here we are a couple of months out from the end of Labor's first term, and you still haven't released the promised National Housing and Homelessness Plan. And you won't support my bill to legislate one, despite 72% of people supporting such a plan. Minister, you understand the importance of numbers. With this kind of support, why won't you legislate a plan?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pocock for his question. And I acknowledge that on many occasions Senator Pocock has asked me questions about the issue of housing and homelessness, and I respect his interest in this topic. But in terms of a plan, as you say, we are still working on that plan. We want to make sure that we get the plan right and that we don't make the wrong decisions in this space. That's why, as a government, we have been consulting all of the stakeholders to come up with the right plan. But we haven't just been sitting on our hands, Senator Pocock. No, Senator Cash, we haven't been sitting on our hands. No, we haven't been sitting on our hands. We have been doing things. We have been doing things to address the 10 years of neglect by your government, Senator Cash. And can I read out some of the things that we've been doing in this space? Would you like to hear that? Yeah, we'd like to hear that. We've made the single biggest Commonwealth investment in social and affording housing in more than a decade. Now, of course, that period takes into account your period in government, Senator Cash, but the biggest single Commonwealth investment in social and affordable housing. Then under the Housing Australia Future Fund and the National Housing Accord, 40,000 new social and affordable homes will be delivered. This includes—
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator David Pocock, first supplementary.
President, thank you, Minister. Minister, we learnt in a response to a question on notice over the summer that the government's National Housing Supply and Affordability Council, who's been advising on the plan, is not in fact measuring for unmet social and affordable housing need. Minister, does the government believe measuring unmet need is essential to formulating an effective plan to meet that need?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pocock for his first supplementary question. Look, we understand that housing and homelessness are important issues in the Australian community. And I started to explain in my first answer, Senator Pocock, some of the things that this government is doing in that space. We recognise that it's a problem. We recognise that it's a concern for many, many Australians. But we also recognise, as a government, we've got an obligation to do something about it. Now, I mentioned two of the things, the biggest Commonwealth investment.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Pocock.
Just on relevant, I asked specifically about whether or not we need to measure unmet need to meet unmet need.
Yes, I'm happy to draw the minister back to your question, Senator Pocock. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. But I am explaining the way in which we deal with this issue of need in our community. We've doubled the Commonwealth's homelessness funding under the $9.3 billion National Agreement on Social Housing and Homelessness to $400 million every year, each and every year.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, you pointed out that I've asked you about this a few times. In October last year, you said, and I quote, "We are working with the states and territories as we speak. The new Minister, Claire O'Neill, is working very hard to get movement on that project." I'm interested why there's been no movement in 6 months. Surely housing is as important, if not more important, than more money to the major parties to keep independents and minor parties out of the Parliament.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thanks, Senator Pocock, for his second supplementary question. I'm not sure what the link between the keeping independents and Tills out of the Parliament has with the issue of housing, but can I say this? We've got a terrific minister in this space. And they are working with the states and the territories to get the best possible result for the Australian community. If these things were easy to fix, Senator Pocock, somebody else would have already done it, and we wouldn't have issues of housing.
Did nothing for a decade.
Yeah, for a decade. That wasted decade when you did nothing.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. The time for answering has expired. Thank you. Order. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. On Monday, Minister Watt provided a figure for the cost of the net zero transition to the economy at $122 billion. AEMO discounted the $500 billion cost by 7% a year, producing a figure of just $122 billion. This left out substantial elements of the cost, which Frontier Economics puts at over $650 billion. There was no allowance for behind-the-meter power, where you go in and take power out of people's wall batteries and EVs. Minister, what is the cost of this behind-the-meter cost to households and businesses that you have left out of the net zero cost?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Thank you very much, President. Well, Senator Roberts yet again asks for more detail in response
Senator Cash.
when questioning a publication that is in the public domain. That is in the public.
Order. This is Senator Roberts' question. He's entitled to a response, and the minister is entitled to silence. Minister McAllister, please continue.
Thanks very much, President. Well, I can inform Senator Roberts, as I have in the past, that the government's approach is to rely on the advice of experts, and the experts at AEMO conduct intensely detailed, publicly available, engaged work with a community of experts to cost the transition for our power system to 2050. And I will say that they have provided information publicly again and again and again that the cheapest path to 2050 to meet our electricity system requirements lies in renewables firmed by batteries, by other forms of storage and by gas. I will say, though, Senator Roberts, that the approach we take, which is to listen to the experts and provide significant amounts of detail in the public domain for scrutiny, is quite different to the approach taken by your party. And I have checked the One Nation website, and you've actually done some work, some policy work over the summer. There was 88 words worth of energy policy previously on the One Nation website about energy and prices. It's down now, I understand, to 33 words or thereabouts. It used to say that you were committed to building low-emission coal-fired power plants. You've now moved to a new variation on this, which says that you're going to change the NEM rules to incentivise coal and gas-fired power. But I make this point, to your credit, it's a great deal more detail than those opposite have provided. The people opposite have proposed a risky nuclear system which they cannot find an expert willing to back, 600 billion's worth on the taxpayer tab, no plan how to pay for it, no plan how to deliver it, and the only certainty that it will drive up costs.
Has expired. Order. Order. Senator Ayres, I've called the chamber to order. That includes you. Senator McKenzie, I think I've called you to order enough times this question time. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, rely on experts, eh? Bombshell Freedom of Information documents show that AEMO was directly instructed by your government to take net zero as a forced assumption. Despite your claims, AEMO's process was not independent of Labor's political agenda. It's true, isn't it, that an even cheaper grid could be built if we ditched net zero, but your government told AEMO they could not look at that.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, Senator Roberts misunderstands the process that AEMO goes through. AEMO has been very clear about the process that they undertake to work through the issues associated with replacing and fixing up the mess that was created by those opposite. Because when those opposite left office, the average wholesale energy price was $286 a megawatt hour. And just like we inherited a 6.1% inflation rate, which they don't take responsibility for, they won't take responsibility for the mess that they left either. They know exactly what was going on. Prices were going up. And what did Mr Taylor do at that time? He went off to the Governor-General to make arrangements to hide that price increase from the Australian people before an election. What a disgrace. There is a lot of work to do, a lot of work to resolve the mess that was bequeathed to the Australian people by those opposite.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Minister, you talked about Liberal policy. I want to know about Labor policy. Australia has been installing more and more wind, solar and batteries onto the grid for 20 years, and electricity prices have never been higher. South Australia, the wind and solar capital, has spot prices averaging $200 per megawatt hour for the last quarter. When will you admit the truth that your net zero is pushing Australia into poverty?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you, President. That statement is simply incorrect. The prices that are reflected in the way that Australians experience their bills are not to do with the spot price. They are an average price from all of the prices that are experienced within the national electricity market. And the truth is that renewables remain the cheapest form of new generation. We've got a lot of work to do. These guys managed the electricity system or mismanaged it over a decade. 22 policies, 4 gigawatts of dispatchable generation left the grid, only 1 came on. That actually causes a problem. That requires resolution. When we left office, prices were very, very high. There was no plan. There was no plan at all, and our government is working through the necessary steps to put in place the generation to secure Australia's interests into the future.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Minister McCarthy. Recently, Dr Nicholas Gruen, an independent economist, handed down his report on Macquarie Point Precinct, and the results were damning. Dr Gruen's report found that the Macquarie Point Precinct project has the hallmarks of mismanagement and that the site selection process was hasty and partial. He found that the project will suffer a massive budget blowout, costing more than $1 billion. But given the Albanese government has stumped up $240 million of taxpayers' cash for the project, the federal government has skin in the game. Has the federal government reviewed Dr Gruen's report? Because apparently you do this all on experts. Or is the government comfortable with pouring money into a project that has an unrealistic budget, an unrealistic timeline and no social licence from the people of Tasmania?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Lambie for her question. Well, what we certainly have an interest in, President, is investing in Tasmania, Senator Lambie. Our government is very, very proud to invest in Tasmania, in particular in housing and infrastructure. And we know that the Australian government is investing not just in the urban renewal precinct at Macquarie Point, but in a range of projects announced throughout this term, including most recently the reconstruction of the Clarendon Vale Oval Pavilion, revitalisation of the Flinders Island Airport, upgrades to local roads to support 600 more homes in South Brighton, and redevelopment of the Princess Theatre and Earl Street Arts Centre in Launceston. And clearly, when we made the arrangement with the Tasmanian government, we expect, like we do with all governments, Senator Lambie, for those governments to then take responsibility for what we provide in terms of our funding arrangements with each state and territory jurisdiction.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr Gruen's report, followed by economist Sol Eastlake's review of Tasmanian finances. Mr Eastlake found that Tasmania's debt will be an estimated $16 billion by 2035, the worst in the country. He found that the state's poor financial position was entirely caused by government policies. Is the federal government going to review Sol Eastlake's report so that it doesn't prop up the Tasmanian government's reckless decisions?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McCarthy.
Well, again, I reject the assertion of reckless decisions in terms of the federal government, Senator Lambie. We clearly want to support the people of Tasmania in every way possible. And I think I've already made clear in my previous response that any funding agreement between the Commonwealth and the Tasmanian government is now for the Tasmanian government to determine the way that funding is spent.
Minister McCarthy, please resume your seat. Senator Lambie.
Thank you. Just a point of order. I just wanted to know whether they're going to review Sol Eastlake's report. It's a simple question. Yes or no?
And your question also went to debt, and I think the minister's being relevant to the question, Senator Lambie, but I'll continue to listen carefully. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. And I have no doubt, Senator Lambie, that you have had meetings with the Minister for Infrastructure, whom I'm sure is very ready to be able to have that meeting with you. But can I continue to point out to the Senate that this is a Tasmanian government responsibility?
Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
Wow, palming it off. Dr Gruen's report recommended renegotiating the timeline with the AFL and parts of the deal. He said it's in the interest of the Tasmanian government and the AFL. The arrogant Rockcliffe government rejected this idea. Is the federal government as reckless as the state Liberal government, or is it willing to support a renegotiation of the Macquarie Point precinct without jeopardising the funding it's already provided?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. The Albanese Labor government is not reckless. We support state and territory jurisdictions in funding, and we certainly do with the Tasmanian people. And I think any further questions on this, I would advise to go to the Minister directly.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Financial Services, Senator Gallagher. Australians in regional and rural areas play a crucial role in contributing to our nation's prosperity, including in my home state of Tasmania. From agriculture, mining, energy and tourism, key regional industries to local small businesses, these communities drive jobs, investment and growth across the country. Right. How will today's announcement by the Albanese Labor government protect access to essential banking services that regional communities rely upon? And how is the national footprint of Australia Post's trusted branch network being harnessed to meet the evolving needs of regional customers and businesses?
Good question.
Thank you, Senator Urquhart. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Urquhart for the question and for all the work she does, particularly for regional communities in the northwest coast of Tasmania and for her home state of Tasmania. It's an important announcement, the one that I know the opposition don't want to hear about this
Minister
because
Gallagher,
they did nothing about regional bank.
Order across the chamber. Senator Colbeck, I'm not quite sure which part of order across the chamber you think doesn't apply to you. Order. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Thank you. I'm astounded that those opposite don't want to hear what we're doing to make sure that people who live in regional communities can have access to banking services and make sure that their needs are being met, particularly after the hundreds and hundreds of bank closures we saw when they were in government that they oversaw, and perhaps, as Senator Cash referred to earlier about having to sit on their hands, that is really summing up the former government. They did sit on their hands a lot. That's why we've inherited a lot of challenges and problems that we've been methodically working through as the Albanese Labor government. We believe that banks have a responsibility to regional communities and we're holding them to it. And I acknowledge the work of Minister Rowland and the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer in all of the discussions that they've had with the banks and with Australia Post to make sure that Bank at Post is able and resourced and supported to do the job where those banking services have been withdrawn. We acknowledge that those communities, like the ones that you represent, Senator Urquhart, and the northwest coast of Tasmania, play a critical role in Australia's economy, and we are standing up for them to make sure that they continue to access the banking services they need. Now, there's a lot of shouting from those opposite. I would have thought they would have welcomed the moratorium on closing of banks. I thought they would have welcomed the agreement to have that trusted Australia Post delivering services to make sure that people get it close to where they live. But no, sitting on their hands, all right, that's all they do.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Urquhart, first supplementary.
Can the minister confirm the Albanese Labor government has secured a new moratorium on regional bank branch closures from participating banks, including NAB's new commitment and extensions by the Commonwealth Bank and Westpac? And can you confirm this ensures communities across regional Australia will continue to have access to face-to-face banking services for consumers and small businesses with no closures until 2027?
Thank you. Just a moment, Minister. Order. Ministers Wong, Watt and McDonald. Order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Urquhart for the question. Yes, I can confirm that the Albanese government has secured a new moratorium arrangements on regional bank closures from a number of key banks, including a new commitment from NAB and extensions by the Commonwealth Bank and Westpac. This ensures that no closures before 31st of July 2027 in regional communities serviced by those banks. This is a major win for regional Australians who have been advocating strongly, and their government has listened. Their government has listened and we have acted and we have reached agreement to make sure that moratorium is in place. We've stepped in. We've not sat on our hands like the former government did, and we have worked with stakeholders to make sure we can get the best outcome for regional communities. This is the best outcome. A moratorium on closures and making sure that Bank at Post is funded and resourced appropriately to do the job that they need to do.
Thank you, Minister. Order. 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 Senator Urquhart, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. In addition to keeping banking services available in the regions, how does this announcement—
Please resume your seat. Seriously, Senator McKenzie. Order. Order. Senator McKenzie, I intend to remind you of Standing Order 203. I've quite frankly lost count of the number of times I've had to call you to order today. Senator Urquhart.
This announcement builds on the Albanese Labor government's broader work to strengthen financial services and protect consumers. How have the government's reforms, whether it's improving access to financial advice, cracking down on scams or strengthening consumer protections, giving Australians greater confidence to engage with the financial system and plan for their future?
Senator Canavan and Senator Watt. I remind both of you of 203. Seriously, come to order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President, and I thank Senator Urquhart for that supplementary. The announcement builds on the Albanese government's ongoing work to ensure the banking sector works for all Australians. We're helping farmers and small business owners in regional areas plan for their future by improving affordable financial advice, making it easier to navigate the challenge they face, whether it's managing cash flow or planning for the retirement. We've got scams prevention, again, that's investing in heavily, something that those opposite didn't do. We've now got the moratorium on banks. We are standing up for regional communities. And we know there's a person over that side of the chamber, and he's in the other place. It's in witness protection right now. He's not allowed to stand up for regional communities. Poor old Barnaby. He just wants to be let out.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Order. 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 Order across the chamber. Order. Once again, Senator Colbeck, I call the chamber to order and you still continue. You are incredibly disrespectful. If you can't listen in silence, leave the chamber. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And if you could ask the minister, when referring to a member of the other place, as they always do to us, to refer to them by their proper title, please.
Thank you, Senator Cash. Order. I'm sure that you are fully aware that it is always my practice to remind senators of that. Thank you. So, Minister Gallagher, I do remind you of that.
Mr Joyce. There he is, wanting to stand up and speak up for regional communities, and he's locked up. Free Mr Joyce. Free Mr Joyce.
Thank you.
Let him speak.
Minister. Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. It's quite a simple question, actually. How many houses have been built under the Housing Australia Future Fund agenda?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Wong.
I would almost take that interjection, Senator. As you know, the government has a $32 billion Homes for Australia plan, which is focused on supply. And as you would also know, that you and others participated in blocking very substantial components of that plan. So obviously, this is we would have liked to have started much of this much earlier, given the housing supply challenge that Australia is facing. Now that job.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
President, it is a point of order on relevance. The question merely asked for a number.
Yes, and it did talk about the housing. It talked about half in the beginning of the question. Order! You are not in a debate with me. The minister's only begun her response. I will listen carefully, and if I need to draw the minister to the question, I will certainly do that. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I'm advised that the government, as a consequence of these policies, has directly supported more than 10,000 new homes since the election, and through investing in social and affordable housing, is helping first home buyers get into the market with a deposit of 5% or less. There is more in the pipeline.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
It is a point of order in relation to relevance. The question was in relation to the Housing Australia Future Fund.
I believe the minister is being relevant to the question. Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
I have responded to the answer to the question, but I would say this in relation to the Housing Australia Future Fund. Senator Bragg, it does seem somewhat hypocritical to come into here and complain about the rollout of that fund when you were amongst the many, the coalition. You are a member of the coalition who have consistently opposed it.
Minister Wong,
consistently opposed it.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
The point of order is again relevance. It is a figure. How many have built? We can tell you the answer at zero.
Cash,
you just need to say it. Zero.
Senator Cash, if you are seeking a point of order, you address your question to me. I've ruled on the point of order. The minister was responding to Senator Cash. I will now remind the minister to go back to the substantive question rather than talking about the senator. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I again say the government has directly supported more than 10,000 homes since we were elected, on top of the 400,000 that have been built nationwide, enabled by the investments in fee-free TAFE and enabling infrastructure. There is more
Minister
homes
Wong,
to come.
Minister, I will call you when there's order in the chamber. Senator Cash. Senator Cash.
President, again, it is a point of order on relevance. We are asking for a figure under the Housing Australia Future Fund. We are not asking for the government.
Thank you, Senator Cash. Senator Cash, as you described, it is a narrow question, but the minister is entitled to go to the context of the question. I'm advised by the clerk. I have drawn the minister. Order. I have drawn the minister back to the question, and I would call the minister again.
Thank you, President. I'm advised that 24,000 homes are in the pipeline through direct Commonwealth investment, including 13,700 under round one of the HAF.
Senator Bragg, first supplementary.
How many have finished?
Order. Senator Bragg. Senator Bragg, I'm sorry. Please resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Bragg, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. So again, the question is, how many houses has the Housing Australia Future Fund actually completed? I don't think the answer is free TAFE. In addition to that, given the overall target of 250,000 houses, how is the government going against that target of 250,000 houses a year?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. As I said, Senator, 24,000 homes in the pipeline through direct Commonwealth investment, including 13,700 under round one of the HAF, and the government is working with the states and territories on what is an ambitious target. But, Senator, really, you have no credibility on this. You voted against the Housing Australia Future Fund every single time. Now you're complaining about delay.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Thank you, President. Again, it's a point of order in relation to relevance. Could you direct the minister to answer the question? There is a difference between in the pipeline and
thank you,
built.
Senator Cash. Senator Cash, the minister is being relevant to your question. She is entitled to talk about housing. Minister Wong, please continue. Senator Bragg, second supplementary.
Given that the Prime Minister has now failed to apologise to Australians for Labor's cost of living crisis, including 12 interest rate rises, energy bills rising by $1,000, living standards collapsing and 27,000 businesses going bust, and a record-breaking household recession, will the Prime Minister now at least apologise to the Australian people for his housing crisis?
Order. 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 Order across the chamber. Minister Wong.
I'm asked about the cost of living issue. I'm asked about the cost of living crisis from a bloke who voted against every cost of living measure this government has put in place for working families, from a man who voted against energy relief, from a man who's voted against childcare, tax cuts and all the range of cost of living relief that we have put in place. You know, you lot have been in opposition for nearly 3 years. You've got 3 policies. $10 billion to fund long lunches, $600 billion to fund nuclear reactors and cuts to everything. That's your cost of living response. And I ask that further questions be placed on notice.